A progress invoice is one where you can invoice a percentage of a product or if a product's already delivered. I have an estimate for a tasting party. However, it also included several physical bottles of olive oil for the party that we directly drop ship to the customer. They have that olive oil, so let's invoice it. Before we can invoice the customer, however, we need to turn on progress invoicing. We do that by selecting Edit from the top menu, choosing Preferences, changing to the Jobs and Estimates section on the left-hand side, changing to the Company Preferences tab, and finally, in the section labeled Do you do progress invoicing, choosing Yes. I'll click the blue OK button, click OK again, and now I'll re-expand everything by clicking the arrow on the navigation pane, clicking Home, maximizing the window, and closing the pane again. We're ready to turn our estimate into a partial invoice. I could click Estimates to get to it that way and create the invoice. However, if I have a lot of estimates at this point, or if it was created a while ago, sometimes it's easier just to do it right from the Customer Center. I'll click Customers on the home screen. Then I'll select Callie Reynolds. On the right, in the Show area, make sure you have all transactions selected and you should see the estimate. Here's the one that we created earlier. I'll double-click on it to bring it up. From here, I'll click Create Invoice at the top of the screen. Because we turned on Progress Invoicing, we're going to get a new dialog box. It's asking me what I want to include on the invoice. Most of the time, you'll probably be creating invoices for the entire estimate, which is the default setting, in which case you'd just be able to quickly click the OK button. But you can also select to create an invoice for a percentage of the entire amount. This is fantastic for service businesses that require a down payment, such as 10% or 50% of the total. You could put the percentage of the estimate right in this field. However, in this case, we're creating an invoice for selected items. We're including the physical products that they already have, not the tasting party that hasn't happened yet. So I'll select Create Invoice for Selected Items and click OK. Here's where we can decide what we want to invoice. Because the tasting party hasn't happened yet, I'm not going to invoice them for any service fees or this party. I don't see any rates in the amount field, so I'm going to place a check mark next to Show Quantity and Rate. It gives us this option because we can change these amounts. Maybe things have changed. That's why it's an estimate. They could have only wanted a few products or maybe a few less bottles. I can click on these columns and arrange them so I can see them clearly. In the quantity, I can see the estimated rate. Here's where I can put in the actual quantities. Maybe they got a few less bottles. In this case, she only got 3 bottles instead of the 4 that was estimated. But everything else had the correct number, so I'm going to go ahead and put those in. The party will still remain 0 because that hasn't happened yet. So I'll click the OK button at the top of the screen, and then the OK button on the notification that the progress invoice has at least one 0 amount item. That's the party, which hasn't happened yet, so we can't invoice it. Here's my invoice. You'll notice that it works just like any other invoice. I can print it later or email it later. My items are being invoiced, and because they're taxable, the balance due reflects that. I'll click Save and Close, and it's going to bring me back to the Customer Center where we started. Here I can see that the customer has an estimate, and now they also have an invoice. If I look all the way over on the left-hand side, I can now see that Callie has a balance total for the outstanding amount.